Good afternoon, all stars. It's your girl, Amasia Star. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Sunday. I know I am. So, if you're new to this channel, you're in for a treat. I am Amasia Star. I call you guys all stars. And yeah, I basically, as a sociology major, I do the research about things that can empower your life. And it's always a joy. I do the research and then I pass it off to you guys. What you do with it is purely up to you. I'm not here to judge you. I'm just here to give you the information and hopefully it enhances your life in some type of way. And if it doesn't enhance your life, maybe you know somebody that it will. You can always like, comment, share, subscribe, and pass the video along. So let's go out down to the track without further ado. All right. Runners, take your mark. Set, go. All right, let's go, you guys. All right, here's today's title. You might be Gen X if why your 14-year-old just don't get you. Here's to generational truths with stats and quotes. All right? So, hey, I'm Amasia Star, and if you were born between the ages of 1965 and 1980, you're probably Gen X. Self-sufficient, skeptical, maybe even sarcastic a little bit. But to a 14-year-old, those Gen Z legends, as we would call them, are very, very different and very unique. They shrug at your little mixtape stories. They don't understand the whole dial-up with the telephone. So you say to yourself, "Oh my goodness, what exactly is going on? We have a disconnect." Apollo, we have a problem. So today we're going to just break down the generational gap, and it is a gap, between Gen X, which is myself, and my 14-year-old son, who is a Gen Z, all right? So let's get ready to roll. Here we go. So let's talk about global stats to set the scene. Workforce power. Gen Z, which is born in 1997 to 2012, will make up 33% of the global workforce by 2025 with high mobility. Around 63% are considering moving abroad, and 87% aspire to be digital nomads. Okay? So, without further ado, let me give you guys some pretty great things, because this is one of my favorite topics, especially when I'm trying to correlate it to my son. Okay. Let's talk about myself first. I'm a Gen X. I was born in 1973. So anybody born between 1965 and 1980, we know all about the latchkey. We're called the latchkey kids, latchkey generation. Very independent, very resourceful. Yes, very mature for our age. Like me personally, I went to boarding school at 14 years old. You know, I look at some of these 14-year-olds and I honestly, truly, I can't even imagine them going around the corner, okay, by themselves. We grew up with MTV, punk rock, indie films, early gaming, because I am you guessed it, a Mrs. Pac-Man queen. We came from tough economic times, 1980s recession, 2008 crash. It helped shape a little bit of our everything. Definitely my grit, definitely my resilience, and of course my pragmatism, all right? Introduce Gen Z. Here we go with my 14-year-old son. Gen Z teens, born between the ages of 1997 and 2012. These digital natives have known smartphones their entire life. And they're the internet babies, okay? Yep, I've added to that. My son had an iPhone at 1, and I taught him how to basically do pictographs. So I use emojis for him to communicate with me, okay? As well as a little bit of sign language. So these things I put a little bit of background about what I do with my own. Anyway, they're very socially aware, aren't they? Because they're social media kids. They're very adaptable, wouldn't you say? And they value everything that is like trending or that's new and that's refreshing. And definitely, they're always talking about their mental health. Communication style. This is how we kind of mismatch. Okay. Gen X, I prefer structured formats like phone calls or even an email. Whereas my son, Gen Z, he wants to use emojis, he wants to text, He wants to communicate in a very quick but informal manner. And if you're getting text by Gen Z and you don't respond immediately, oh my goodness, that can be a major problem. They don't realize that sometimes people have other things to do. Sometimes their priority list shifts within a moment. No, if you leave them hanging, it's like, whew, to say it's terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible. Okay. And that can cause a little riffraff, right? Let's talk about work and life values. Gen X values loyalty and stability. Gen Z sometimes, this is according to the statistics, okay? The other one was according to Business Insider when I was talking about texting and using emojis. Now, this is according to the Business Insider as well, and New York Post. Gen X values loyalty and stability. Gen Z prioritizes flexibility, purpose, and balancing well-being with work. Digital native versus digital immigrant. Gen Z grew up on the internet. Gen X adapted to the internet. That gap, though, it leads to a lot of discourse, misunderstandings, and definitely different uses of the word etiquette, okay? What I see as etiquette, yeah, sometimes he's a work in progress. Anyway, so that's according to Kasasa, and of course, again, the Business Insider. When it comes to pop culture and humor, this is just a quick comparison, you guys. This is not an exhaustive list, okay? Pop culture and humor. TikTok, Gen X rise trend. Gen X jokingly declared themselves defenders of old school values. Gen Z started cracking jokes about us, saying, what does my son say all the time? It's cringy. Okay, and that's according to Reddit. A millennial warned that you do not summon latchkey kids unless it's ... eclipses. Last resort. Capturing that playful, mock, ominous Gen X persona, right? That's according to Upworthy. All right, let's try to bridge the gap a little bit with empathy. Synonymous differences. Okay, so you guys, this is not a war, okay? It's not us against you. It's a versus, but it's more like exchanging information for the purposes of growth and a bond. Long jump. Yep. All right, I broke the record on that one. Okay, so one Gen X dad and one Gen Z daughter story shows respect for each other's values rooted in kindness despite communication gaps, according to Business Insider. The Inc. article points out that most generational conflicts is stereotype driven. So it can really be kind of smoothed out a little bit with a little bit of understanding, a lot of patience and a lot of understanding, okay? That's according to the Inc.com. The disconnect, I want to be able to elaborate a little bit. You guys, it's real. Okay, it's so real that I'm doing a YouTube video on it. It's real. Gen X, I do believe, can learn to pause judgment. They're quick to write you off, ghost you. And we can also learn a little bit more about the teenage communication styles. Like this thing. What is this? Okay. And that's say less, right? If we can kind of swap, maybe you guys listen to some of our stories about how we grew up, how we played outside till the lights came on, how we drank out the water hose outside. If you lived in America, you were doing that on summer days. If we can kind of swap a little bit of those type of stories, and maybe we can kind of bridge that gap a little bit. I will say this. Gen Z can appreciate Gen X's resilience and real world wisdom because we got some real world wisdom. We matured at a really, really, really fast rate. Really fast rate. And sometimes I look at, our next generation and I worry a little bit because their maturity level and what they focus on just seems a little, I'm not going to say shallow. It just could use a little bit more grounding. So I'm not here to judge. I'm just trying to exchange some information. And I'm not saying that all Gen X are immature because you guys are not. Actually, you guys are very mature. It's just we're trying to make sure that we can give you guys the wisdom and you guys can keep us hip and young. How about that? How about that for a happy medium? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. So let's get into just a little bit of statistics before I let you go. Okay? A little bit of quotes. In the tech in the workplace, preferences. 95% of Gen Z say technology is a deal breaker when choosing a job, with 85% wanting to work with cutting-edge tools. Wow. That's according to Maverish, okay? 90% say workplace diversity matters, while 75% prioritize work-life balance over high salaries. And that's according to Maverish. Global Generation X impact. Gen Xers form a strategic backbone. Many are in leadership roles at this point. The average Fortune 500 CEO, give or take, is about 59 years of age. And they wield about 26% of American wealth as of 2023, up from 50% coming from 2013. So that's nice for a decade. That's according to Ipsos Insight LLC.foyleon.com. One more thing. Workplace makeup and loyalty. In the United States, Gen Z now comprises 18% of workers, with Gen X at 31% and millennials at 36%. And that's according to flexer.com. Loyalty is similar across ages. About 84% of Gen Z feel loyal to their employer, compared to 88% in older generations. Yet, and that's according to flexer.com, yet Gen Z and millennials tend to stay for less than 5 years at their job, while Gen X, we stick around 5 to 10 years on average. Again, according to flexhour.com. AI anxiety gap. Let's talk about that. A survey across 7 countries, Australia, UK, US, France, Germany, Mexico, and Brazil, found that only 13% of Gen Z plan to stay at one company for 10 years versus 36% of Gen X. Gen Z is much more worried about AI erasing enjoyable parts of their jobs, while 42% of Gen Z are concerned compared to just 20% of boomers. That's again, according to news.com.au. All right, so Gen Z voice. A TikToker user named Alejandro recounted being rejected by a Gen X hiring manager for lacking a 5-year plan. A Gen Z problem that framed her as unreliable, as she put it. I, quote, graduated a year ago, and no, I don't know what I want my future to look like, but I'm a good worker, and my resume shows it. That's according to the New York Post. So we can see how now it's starting to affect the workforce, how we might view a great candidate versus a great candidate, okay? Gen X side, here's a little bit of humor. An Australian opinion piece, okay, reflects the class humorously. Gen Xers come off as pragmatic and cynical, while Gen Z is emotionally and impressive, idealistic, digitally savvy. According to Adelaide, okay, .now. Adelaide Now. So online rose from a Gen Z perspective via Reddit. A user shared a quote from 1274CE's Peter the Hermit, mocking older generations for complaints about the youth. And they remarked, they're hypocrites. Pay them no mind at all. Oh, really? Just gonna write us off. But what I would say is this, okay? Let me wrap up my own little part. If we can bridge some of the gap, I would use these tips. Keep the communication open. Use their language sometimes, memes and TikTok emojis for us, to them. Speak their vibe a little bit when possible. Reverse the mentoring. So let Gen Z show you cool tech tips and teach them about patience and history. We can also pair wisdom with support, right? So we can offer our knowledge and our experiences and our guidance. It's okay. It's okay if they reject some of it. Maybe they'll take some of it with them. So if you're Gen X and you're watching this, yes, 14-year-olds might not get your mixtapes, you guys. Don't cry about it. Maybe just a little bit. It's okay. We can also let's meet in the middle. Okay, so maybe not on MySpace, but guess what? We can meet together on TikTok. All right? As always, thank you, YouTube, for being an amazing platform. It's always a pleasure. Please, you guys, don't forget, like, comment, share, subscribe. And if you're new, in the comments below, are you a Gen X or Gen Z? I'd like to know. And I hope that this information was very helpful. If you want more tips and more empowering ways to help guide your family, come right here. Amasia Star, AMAJASTARR. This video will be on YouTube shortly. Bye.